Boat prices have crossed a line nobody expected, and it happened quietly. Models that once defined the starter boat category now cost more than a used car and a vacation combined, and first-time buyers are starting to wonder if the entry level even exists anymore. But here's the twist most people never see. Beneath all the noise, there are still boats slipping under that $29,000 mark. Not the stripped, neglected leftovers, but real, dependable hulls that hold their value and teach new owners without punishing them. The trick is knowing where they hide, when they appear, and which ones vanish the moment you scroll past. So today, we're breaking down the 8 boats that still earn the title entry level without crossing the line. Bayliner Element 18. Some entry-level boats give themselves away the moment you step aboard. The layout feels calm, the proportions feel forgiving, and nothing about it seems eager to punish a beginner. Even before the engine starts, you can sense it was built for someone taking their first steps into boating rather than someone chasing speed. Only after that impression settles does the design reveal why so many first-time owners gravitate toward it. Because this is a relatively modern design, many examples in the used market still show modest engine hours. It is common to see 4-stroke outboards with readings in the 200 to 500 hour range, paired with clean service stickers and uncorroded mounting hardware. Those small visual clues matter. A tidy rigging tube, intact engine cowling seals, and a propeller without deep gouges all speak louder than any sales line about light family use. When a seller backs that up with basic maintenance records, you begin to see why this platform fits the entry-level category so well. The layout keeps things simple. A bow seating area with removable cushions, a straightforward helm with analog gauges, and an aft bench that transitions into a usable swim zone create a deck that makes sense even if you have never set foot on a boat before. There are no hidden cabins to ventilate, no complicated galley circuits, no mysterious seacocks buried behind panels. Your electrical world is mostly navigation lights, a horn, a bilge pump, and perhaps a stereo. That is it. Simplicity is not a downgrade here. It is protection. In many regions, market softening and rising interest rates have pushed sellers to price clean. Element 18 packages comfortably under the $29,000 ceiling, especially when you look at boats a few seasons old with modest options. That downward pressure is not a red flag on its own. It is simply the reality of buyers chasing larger, flashier platforms and leaving the logical entry boats slightly underappreciated. Inspection remains the real filter. Walk the non-skid surfaces and feel for flex. Look along the hull sides for dock rash that has cut through gel coat. Check the transom area for any signs of stress around the engine mount bolts. If you can, have a technician plug into the engine to verify hour readings and over-rev history. When those details line up, the Bayliner Element 18 becomes what it was designed to be: an accessible, forgiving way to start boating without straying over that $29,000 line. When you connect the steady hull, the predictable handling, and the honest hours found in many used examples, the appeal becomes hard to ignore. And just when you think you understand the rhythm of what an entry-level boat should be, a completely different kind of platform shows up and changes the conversation. Tracker Pro Team 175 TXW. Light aluminum boats often reveal their personality before the engine ever starts. The way they settle into the water, the small shifts at idle, and the balance underfoot tell you a lot about how they were built and how they've been treated. This one makes its intentions clear almost immediately. It feels steady, uncomplicated, and focused. The kind of platform that teaches without overwhelming. Only after you spend a few minutes aboard does it become obvious why so many first-time anglers begin their story here. Used examples usually show honest engine hours, often in the 400 to 700 range. But those numbers alone aren't what matter, it's the context. When the outboard's skeg is straight, the anti-ventilation plate is intact, and the trailer rolls quietly instead of chattering, you start to see a boat that lived mostly on the water rather than in the shop. Trolling motors with clean wiring and foot pedals that still respond smoothly reinforce that quiet history of upkeep. The layout follows the same philosophy. Raised casting decks fore and aft, a simple live well, predictable rod storage, and a clean helm with readable gauges. Nothing is hidden, nothing is over-designed. A beginner steps aboard, drops gear where it belongs, and goes fishing without fighting the boat. Because the hull is aluminium, towing becomes accessible to people with smaller vehicles, and launching stays predictable even at shallow or uneven ramps. Maintenance stays reasonable. Most components across Tracker's aluminium lineup are interchangeable. Bilge pumps, live well pumps, control cables, and navigation lights are easy to source and inexpensive to replace. Cosmetic items like carpet or seat vinyl may age faster than the hull, but those are the easiest parts of ownership to refresh. What deserves the closest inspection is the structure. Rivet lines, weld seams, the transom's rigidity, and the deck's firmness. Market pressure from larger and more option-heavy fishing rigs has quietly pushed many 175 TXW packages below the $29,000 line. The attention goes to deeper hulls with giant screens, and the simpler, proven boats slip through unnoticed, which is exactly where the opportunity appears for new buyers. When inspecting one in person, let your hands do the reading. Press down on the casting decks. Trace rivet lines with your fingertips. Look under the consoles for tidy wiring instead of aftermarket clutter. When the physical cues line up with the engine hours and the hull's behavior, this boat reveals itself for what it really is: an accessible, steady, low-risk way into fishing-focused ownership. And just when you think you've defined what an entry-level boat should feel like, another design appears that turns that definition upside down. Sea-Doo Switch Compact. Every now and then, a boat shows up that doesn't look like it came from the same blueprint as everything else. The proportions feel unusual at first glance. The deck seems modular instead of fixed, and the hull doesn't match the lines of a typical beginner runabout. That unfamiliarity is exactly what draws people in. Before it even launches, the design pushes you to reconsider what a starter boat can be, and that curiosity grows the moment you see it move. Jet propulsion changes the equation for new boaters. Without an exposed propeller or a hanging out drive, shallow coves and soft bottom beaches feel less intimidating. The safety margin increases, but so does the learning curve. Jet boats reward smooth throttle inputs and awareness at low speed. Once that rhythm clicks, the boat feels surprisingly agile. It spins, accelerates, and glides in a way shallow draft aluminium rigs simply can't replicate. Most used examples show relatively low hours, often in the 100 to 300 range, which makes sense because these boats tend to be used for shorter outings rather than long-distance days. Clean engine bays, unscuffed upholstery, and deck tiles that still lock firmly into place usually indicate a careful owner. And because the hull is built on proven personal watercraft engineering, the mechanical foundation tends to be reliable when serviced properly. The deck is where the Switch Compact truly separates itself. Every piece, seats, tables, storage modules, connects to a floor grid system. Owners rearrange layouts from season to season without tools. One year, it behaves like a social lounge boat. The next, a stripped-down water toy platform. The simplicity of the systems helps too. A compact helm, basic gauges, straightforward wiring. Nothing spirals into the complexity that traps new buyers in expensive repairs. As supply improved, resale prices began settling into the sub-$29,000 range, especially for earlier units or packages with modest factory options. The pricing varies by region and season, but the pattern stays consistent enough to track. Inspection requires a slightly different eye. Check the jet pump housing and intake grate for signs of rock strikes. Look for heat patches or repairs on the hull bottom. Walk the modular floor and feel for looseness. Examine bimini hardware and side rail mounts. these parts take the most strain. Once you understand how the lightweight hull, the jet system, and the modular interior all work together, the design shifts from unusual to logical. And after seeing how far versatility can stretch without complicating ownership, it becomes natural to wonder what a more traditional hull might offer while still keeping that beginner-friendly feel. If this video has helped you read the market a little clearer, give it a like. It tells me to keep tracking the models that actually hold up for new owners. And let me know in the comments what boats under that $29,000 line are starting to move faster where you are. That kind of local feedback sharpens the next breakdown for everyone. And if you want each update the moment conditions change, subscribing keeps you from missing the quiet opportunities. Yamaha AR190 and SX190. Some runabouts feel settled even before they leave the trailer. The hull sits with a certain calmness, the proportions look balanced, and the helm has a way of inviting you in without overcomplicating anything. Those small signals often tell the story before the engine ever turns over. Only then do you start noticing why this size and shape have remained so consistent over the years. Owners who use these boats for lake days, light water sports, and family cruising often accumulate hundreds of hours without seeing anything more dramatic than routine oil changes and cooling system service. It is common to encounter hour meters in the 300 to 600 range, paired with engine bays that still present clean hoses, intact clamps, and wiring that follows factory paths. Because there is no stern drive hanging off the back, there are fewer bellows, universal joints, and gimbal bearings to worry about. The jet units themselves do their best work when maintained, but not overcomplicated. The interior layout feels immediately accessible, a walk-through bow with usable seating, a pair of helm and companion seats, and a rear bench that flows into Yamaha's now familiar swim platform, create a space that functions well for new owners. The extended platform at the stern becomes a natural staging area for swimming, gearing up for tow sports, or simply sitting low to the water at anchor. For people stepping up from personal watercraft, that space feels like a gentle progression rather than a leap. On the used market, AR190 and SX190, models from earlier in their production run, have gradually drifted into a price band that often falls below $29,000, especially for boats with single engines and basic option packages. Later models with more features may still sit higher, but patient shoppers who track listings see the range clearly enough. Inspection on these boats centers on the jet propulsion system and hull integrity. Look closely at the impeller and wear ring for evidence of sand or gravel ingestion. Check the clean-out ports to ensure they open and seal properly. Inside the engine compartment, search for any signs of saltwater corrosion if the boat has seen coastal use. On a water test, feel for smooth acceleration without excessive vibration or cavitation. When the power delivery feels smooth, the hull settles into chop gracefully, and the layout makes sense for beginners, it becomes clear why so many owners start here. But not everyone wants a compact bowrider. Some prefer an open deck, straightforward fittings, and a reputation built over decades rather than trends. Boston Whaler 150 Montauk. Before it ever leaves the dock, this compact center console carries a kind of steadiness that newer designs try to replicate but rarely match. The open deck, the firm rails, and the no-nonsense footprint feel immediately familiar, even to people who have never operated a boat. It's the kind of design that doesn't need an introduction to feel trustworthy. Many used 150 Montauk hulls have lived through full seasons of fishing, exploring, and teaching new operators the fundamentals of boat handling. Yet it is not unusual to find examples with four-stroke outboards showing 300 to 700 hours and still idling cleanly. Careful owners who rinse thoroughly after salt use, change oils on schedule, and store with the hull properly supported tend to leave a clear trail. Gel coat that still reflects light evenly, stainless hardware without heavy tea staining, and rub rails that are intact rather than shredded around the bow all hint at that kind of stewardship. the layout is almost elemental. A simple bow area that can be left open or fitted with cushions. A central console with mounted wheel and gauges. A reversible pilot seat. And modest aft platforms near the engine bracket. There are no interior walls to hide moisture problems. No decorative headliners to sag. For an entry-level buyer, everything is in plain view. That transparency is one of the Montauk's quiet advantages. As newer, larger Whaler models have drawn much of the brand's marketing spotlight, used 150 Montauk listings have found their own gravity around value points that can sit near or under $29,000, depending on age, power, and equipment. Boats with newer four-stroke engines and updated electronics may command more, but older packages with solid hulls and serviceable power plants often fall well within an entry-level budget. Inspecting a 150 Montauk is partly about what you see and partly about what you feel. Run a hand along the hull sides and around rail bases, checking for hairline cracks that might suggest abuse rather than normal flex. Stand on the decks and listen for creaks or hollow sounds. Pay attention to scuppers and drains. Unusual water retention can sometimes hint at foam saturation. On the mechanical side, a compression test and a sea trial remain just as important here as on larger boats. After a few minutes aboard, the simplicity starts to feel like a strength rather than a limitation. And once you see how far an honest layout can take a new owner, it becomes natural to consider a boat built around comfort, space, and easy conversation rather than pure function. Bennington 220 SL. Some boats feel welcoming from the second your shoes hit the deck. The furniture sits at comfortable angles, the rail height feels reassuring, and nothing about the layout pushes you in any particular direction. Instead, it quietly suggests that boating can be slow, easy, and social. That tone sets in before you ever untie a line. The story begins beneath the deck. Bennington's aluminum tubes carry a reputation for clean welds, predictable buoyancy, and long-term resistance to the subtle corrosion issues that plague cheaper pontoons. You see the truth of that in used listings. Many 220 SL packages pair their tubes with four-stroke outboards, showing 400 to 700 hours. Yet the motors still start cleanly, idle steadily, and push the boat with the kind of quiet confidence that tells you the hull has nothing to hide. The absence of deep dents, creased seams, or patched welds on the tubes says just as much as the hour meter does. Inside, the layout keeps things welcoming. Sweeping L-shaped seating at the stern, comfortable forward lounges, and a helm that does not overwhelm new captains create an environment where families can settle in instantly. The helm cluster is straightforward, analog gauges, simple toggles, and just enough instrumentation to keep you informed without demanding constant attention. Storage beneath the seats stays wide and accessible, allowing gear to disappear without cluttering the deck. For someone learning the rhythms of boating, that simplicity becomes a quiet safety net. Used market trends have pushed many clean Bennington 220 SL packages under the $29,000 threshold, especially when equipped with mid-range outboards in the 75 to 115 horsepower range. These are not stripped base rentals. They are well-kept family boats that saw seasonal use, lived on trailers or covered lifts, and now enter resale as sellers shift to larger tritoons or faster rigs. That movement creates opportunity for buyers who understand that condition always outweighs options lists. When inspecting a 220 SL, start with the tubes. Run your palm along the outer edges, feeling for corrugation scars or signs of impact. Kneel beneath the deck and check the cross members for corrosion blooms or loose bolts. On deck, walk slowly from bow to stern, testing for soft spots in the decking or unusual flex near high traffic zones. Upholstery tells its own story. Tight seams, foam that still rebounds, and vinyl without deep sunburn all point toward a life spent under proper covers. With well-kept tubes, straightforward systems, and a layout that leaves room to breathe, it becomes clear why so many families start here. But if you prefer something that blends that ease with a more modern bowrider, shape, there's another direction worth exploring. Bayliner VR4 and VR5. Modern compact bowriders tend to give themselves away with their proportions. The beam forward stance, the sharp yet approachable lines, and the balanced weight distribution signal a design built for small families stepping into boating for the first time. Everything feels intentional rather than ornamental. Only after absorbing that do you see how the interior follows the same philosophy. Underneath, the hulls carry a beam-forward design that widens the bow seating area without turning the boat into a blunt-nosed barge. On the water, that translates into a ride that feels more substantial than the length on paper might suggest. Many used examples are powered by 4-stroke outboards, though stern-drive versions exist as well. Engines in the 250 to 500-hour range are common on the used market. And when combined with intact service decals and clean engine bays, those numbers fall well within a reasonable expectation for a boat at this price point. Inside, the layouts are focused on usable space. Bow lounges with backrests that make sense. Cockpit seating that allows passengers to face forward or turn toward conversation. And transom areas that link naturally to swim platforms all make life easier for new owners. Storage compartments are designed with coolers, fenders, and life jackets in mind rather than being awkward afterthoughts. The appeal for entry-level buyers lies in that blend of current styling and manageable complexity. There may be more switches on the dash than on older boats, especially when optional lighting and audio packages are included. But the underlying systems are still simple compared to larger cruisers or multi-engine rigs. For someone stepping into boating for the first time, it feels like a modern vehicle on the water, not a project. As these models accumulate seasons on the water, more of them appear in resale listings at price points that comfortably sit under $29,000, particularly for early production years and for boats with modest factory options. Packages with trailers, biminis, and basic electronics often cluster around that threshold in many markets. Inspection here should focus on both structure and technology. Walk the decks to check for unusual flex near the helm and aft corners. Look closely at the hull around the bow for evidence of hard dock contact. On stern-drive versions, pay particular attention to bellows, gimbal bearings, and corrosion on the drive housing. On outboard versions, focus on compression balance, gear lube condition, and proper shifting. When the gel coat is clean, the decks feel firm, and the systems behave exactly as they should. The value becomes surprisingly clear. And once you realize how many entry-level buyers land here, it opens the door to a final category that takes a different path entirely. 19 to 21. Foot Cobalt and Sea Ray bow riders. Older premium fiberglass boats carry a presence that's hard to miss. The hull thickness, the hardware weight, and the understated styling all hint at a design era more focused on longevity than trend chasing. Even tied to a dock, these boats feel like they were built to outlast whatever comes after them. It's only when you climb aboard that the details confirm it. A well-kept 19 or 21-foot Cobalt or Sea Ray from this era will often show engines with 600 to 1,000 hours, sometimes more. Those numbers can seem high at first glance, but they do not tell the whole story. What matters more is how those hours were accumulated and maintained. Service records that show regular oil changes, cooling system flushes, and timely manifold and riser replacements speak volumes. Engine bays where hoses are still pliable, clamps are not corroded into flakes, and wiring remains neatly loomed add another layer of reassurance. On deck, these boats carry layouts that still stand up today. Deeper freeboard than many entry-level hulls, seating with firmer cushioning, and hardware that feels solid underhand create a sense of trust. Consoles often house better quality gauges and, in some cases, integrated switch panels that have outlasted multiple aftermarket equivalents. For new owners, that translates into a boat that feels serious without feeling unmanageable. In the current market, some of these boats, especially those without the very top engine packages or most elaborate option lists, exchange hands at or under the $29,000 level. Regional variations are real, and condition remains the dominant factor. But the trend exists. Buyers who are willing to look beyond model year and instead focus on hull integrity and mechanical honesty are the ones who tend to find the best examples. Inspection on this category must be thorough. Transoms, stringers, and deck cores deserve careful attention. Tapping with a plastic mallet, using a moisture meter where possible, and paying attention to any unusual flex or creaking underfoot are all worthwhile steps. On stern drive models, the condition of the outdrive, bellows, universal joints, and steering components can make or break the value equation. A compression test and a real sea trial are non-negotiable. When a candidate passes those exams, the reward is significant. You end up owning a hull that was built to a higher structural standard than many new budget boats, for a price that fits within an entry-level budget. It will not shout brand new at the dock, but it will settle into the water with a quiet confidence that you feel through the wheel and floor. For many first-time owners, that sensation is worth more than any touchscreen. Every boat on this list earns its place for one reason. Each one makes boating accessible without demanding deep pockets or expert-level knowledge on day one. Entry-level is really about finding a hull that lets you learn and still enjoy the process. As the market shifts, patterns appear before most people notice them. If you've spotted changes in your area, share them in the comments. Your insight helps others see what's coming. And if you found this breakdown useful, hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next price window before it quietly closes.